Why the fuck do rap fans pretend like when a featured artist has a slightly better verse than the main artist automatically got washed? No, Earl did not get washed on Hive. No, nobody got washed on Verbal Intercourse. And even though I used to think this, Jay-Z did not get washed on Renegade. And a big reason for that why is because Jay-Z provided a completely different style to his rapping that Eminem did not provide. He added to the song. If you add to a song in any way, shape, or form, saying you got washed doesn't really mean much to me. Usually when people talk about being washed, it is just from a lyrical standpoint, and I'm kind of over that at this point. A perfect example of this would be every single time Elzhi jumps on a track with Griselda. Every fucking feature Elzhi has with Griselda, he absolutely murders them lyrically. Let's look at the Steiners. Obviously, we know that Elzhi is a way more gifted rapper than Westside Gunn, and even if he delivers an average verse, he's gonna have a way better lyrical performance than Westside Gunn. But what Westside Gunn provides to that track, Elzhi can't do. He can't have the voice that Westside Gunn has. He doesn't have the style that Westside Gunn has. He doesn't really have the swagger or the charisma to the level that Westside Gunn has. So of course, he washed him there lyrically, but that's about it. Everything that Elzhi can't provide in that track, Westside Gunn did. And that's the reason why I wouldn't even technically call that being washed, because he added so much to that song. How in the world do people not consider The Love Below a solo album? Now, I had a video talking about how I believe Daytona is an album, and the main reasoning for it was because the line between albums and EPs and mixtapes grows thinner by the day. And to me, whatever an artist titles his project as, that's what it's gonna be, because you have Isaiah Rashad's Sylvia Demo, which is literally a 14-track EP. You have Daytona, like I mentioned, which is a 7-song album. So at this point, the amount of songs and the length to a project doesn't really signify what it is anymore. And I think you saying this is an album, that alone puts it at a higher threshold of expectation, and I think it takes balls to do that. I think a lot of people, when they say, oh, I'm just releasing a mixtape, it could just be something they're experimenting with, whatever the fuck. But put all that bullshit aside, this man literally performed, recorded, and wrote every single song on this album except one. At that point, I really don't know how you can use that against him, because I see people try to use this argument of, oh, Andre doesn't have a solo album, so he can't be considered a GOAT. Like, if you don't think it's a full solo album, fine, but to use that against him when the man literally wrote, recorded, performed, and produced like 95% of a 20-song record, how the fuck is it not considered a solo album? Some people will say, well, it's part of a double album, so it's not really just his solo album. And I really don't get that. When Pac signed his record to Death Row, he had a 3-album deal, and 2 of those albums were fulfilled through All Eyes on Me being a double album. And Pac gave you a double album worth of material, and so did Big Boy and Andre in this situation. It is a total of 39 songs. To not say that each one of them had their own solo album with this collection of 2 projects, I think it's just insane at this point. And people's arguments grow weaker when they consider a fucking Yachty mixtape with like 53 fucking features and less songs than The Love Below a full solo project, but they don't consider The Love Below a solo album in its own. I think it's just ridiculous. And that's not a shot at Yachty. I love Yachty. You should listen to Lobo too, because it's probably better than the last time you heard it. Why are rap fans so impatient? I think this is just something that I'm so outside of the spectrum when it comes to this opinion that I don't ever think I'll agree with anybody that disagrees with this point, but 2 to 3 years in between albums is fucking normal. I see this whole rushing of the album process a lot with Kendrick. People are constantly complaining recently about Kendrick not dropping albums and not dropping music consistently enough. And I think he does get tied into the whole TDE situation because that label does seem like a fucking mess at times. But this man literally dropped To Pimp a Butterfly in 2015, Untitled in 2016, Damn in 2017, and then he curated an entire movie soundtrack in 2018, then took a fucking break for 2019, then was literally scheduled to drop an album in 2020. If you look at his tour dates and the festivals that he was set to headline, the man was clearly dropping an album this year, but guess what? A fucking pandemic happened. Like, literally a pandemic is what has to stop Kendrick from dropping an album, and people are still fucking complaining, saying, oh, he hasn't dropped music in years, even though that's perfectly normal for an artist. Like, imagine shoegaze fans having to look at TDE fans always complaining about Kendrick. Imagine having to be a Have a Nice Life fan, or a My Bloody Valentine fan, or a Sweet Trip fan, or a fucking Slow Dive fan, and having to see people complain because they haven't gotten music in 2 to 3 years. Like, let these fucking artists create. An album like To Pimp a Butterfly doesn't just come about in the span of a year. I swear Griselda just ruined this shit for everybody, what they've done with this past few years, which I love. You know, give me as much music as you want, but you taking time to be patient to perfect your music, I will never criticize an artist for doing that. Stop disrespecting an artist that has influenced your favorite. Now, when I say disrespect, this doesn't mean that you have to like them. There's plenty of people that have influenced one of my favorites, but I don't always really like their music. I always respect them though. This is something that I heavily see with Kanye fans, and especially the hatred that they have, or some of them have, towards 90s rap. Like, there's so much of Kanye's fan base that just doesn't listen to 90s rap, hasn't even like taken the real time to digest it, and they constantly disrespect them by minimizing how talented they are. And so much of that era influenced Kanye. The man literally had taped on his studio wall what would Mobb Deep do to influence him when creating 808s and Heartbreak. So again, if you're a Kanye fan and you don't like Mobb Deep's music, perfectly fine. If you're gonna completely disregard what Prodigy and Havoc did to rap when he literally influenced heavily your favorite rapper, you're gonna look stupid every time and hella pretentious. This man was also heavily influenced by even older rap. His subject matter was so close to Public Enemy, especially in that second album, Late Registration, when he got like his most political, I would say. Like, not only musically was he influenced by 90s guys, also even dating farther back than Mobb Deep, he was influenced in his subject matter by guys like Chuck D, and the fact that so many of his fans constantly not just don't like their music, disrespect these legends is actually ridiculous. Personally, I think if you've watched some of my videos, you know that I don't like Yeezus, and my opinion with that album has kind of grown over time. I've been able to like really respect what Yeezus has been able to accomplish, and a big part of that is because it influenced one of my favorite artists today. JPEG Mafia was heavily influenced by Yeezus before he made Veteran, before he made All My Heroes Are Cornballs.
But my biggest influence, it's probably not cool to say, but it's Kanye West. That's just it. He's the best. He's the absolute best to me. He's the best. Kanye West is the best person at making a final product. Every one of his final products changes niggas' lives.
So I can say that I don't like Yeezus, but to completely disrespect it, to say that it didn't do anything for rap, it didn't create any type of influence or change when one of my favorite current MCs is influenced by him, it would just make me look silly. I hate when albums don't have a good closer. Every single album should end like Only Built for Cuban Links, have Heaven and Hell be your second to last track, and have North Star Jewel be your last track. If you're not doing that, you're fucking up. I hate when things end abruptly with no real reasoning as to why.